Poprosím vás, zaujmite svoje pozície. Dovolte mi, aby som vás privítal menom Domu umenia Kunzala Bratislava na ďalšom. Ja som rád bez toho, tak to nevadí. A tak oni to všetci no však ešte neprekladajú. Aj tak to nikto nemá tie sluchátka z tých, čo sú zahraničné. Rád by som vás privítal na ďalšom pokračovaní v istom zmysle voľného cyklu prednáškového Revisited. Poprosím vás, aby ste si vypli mobil. Dnes máme veľmi milú a príjemnú príležitosť privítať medzi nami dvoch mimoriadne významných hostí, Bojanu Pejić a Davida Elliotta. Vítam ich medzi nami. Zároveň vítam aj mnohých ďalších významných hostí, ktorí sa tu nachádzajú. Dúfam, že tu vznikne produktívna komunikácia následne. My sme avizovali to poradie opačne, takže teraz prvý vystúpi David Elliott, potom Bojana Pejić. By som rád povedal pár slov. Po štúdiách dejín umenia David Elliott pracoval 20 rokov v Múzeu moderného umenia v Oxforde, kde mal na starosti najmä medzinárodnú výstavnú činnosť. Následne bol 5 rokov riaditeľom Moderna Museum v Štokholme. To je v čase, kedy bola prezentovaná aj výstava Art to the Wall, ktorú spoločne kurátorovali naši dnešní hostia. Neskôr bol riaditeľom Tokyo Mori Art Museum v rokoch 2001 až 2006, prvým riaditeľom Istanbul Modern v roku 2007, profesorom muzeálnych štúdií na Čínskej univerzite v Hongkongu medzi tým a poslednú trojicu tvoria jeho umelecké riaditeľovanie veľkých bienále v Sydney, prvé kievské bienále a tohtoročné 4. moskovské bienále. Ja by som mu rád odovzdal teraz slovo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really the warm-up act for Bojana Pejić, so I'll try to keep you amused and also be as quick as I can be. And I thought, well, I can't take it for granted that we're all coming from the same place, although I do think basically we're coming from the same position. But I'd like to explain to you a little bit about a part of my trajectory as a curator. And so I'm going to talk about some old and new exhibitions, mainly new ones, and the kind of thing I do, because I think in that you will find some echoes and some things which maybe you disagree with or maybe you think are important. And I think it's particularly important at this moment. We have the opening of this Kunsthalle here, a very fascinating exhibition about the 90s, art, exhibitions and curatorship in Slovakia in the 90s. And one of the things I do deeply believe is that exhibitions should be necessary, and they should also be good. And I think this idea of necessariness and goodness of the art and of the curating is absolutely important. And for me, if I felt I wasn't performing as well as I could or as well as I would like, I would have to stop doing what I do and do something else. And I think this kind of discipline, which sometimes means getting up in the morning, why bother? Why should anyone bother about art or an art exhibition? Why is it really important? And I think that, if I can't answer that question, we really ought to be doing something more useful with our lives. So, in a roundabout way, what I'm going to say and show you is my answer, at the moment, to these questions. So, I'm starting with a show which took place in the mid-80s in Oxford, where I spent rather a long time, and it's of avant-garde art in Japan. I'm not going to go into details about it, but it may seem to have been a slightly odd thing to do. It's one of the best exhibitions I did while I was in Oxford. And when I started there in the mid-70s, they were showing avant-garde art, because the avant-garde still existed then. Somehow, between 1975 and 1980, it imploded. It no longer existed. So to start off with, I was showing Donald Judd and Hans Harker, and got very interested in Russian constructivism, so we did big shows of Lisitsky and Alexander Rodchenko. Historically, people like Jackson Pollock, because no one was taking Jackson Pollock at all seriously then. It seemed to me that one needed to look back to the early history of our modernity, and to the, if you like, the Greenberg years, and to see what sense there was in this, because we also return to that later in the program. And I think when you are a curator, you're making individual statements through exhibitions, but also you're making a much bigger statement through a program, if you have the chance to do a program in a museum, or the exhibitions you do consecutively throughout your career as a curator. So somehow it makes sense. The dots have to join up. And if the dots don't join up, there's a problem. So why did I get involved with Japan? Why did I start looking at Japan? I guess the very short answer to that is that at the end of the 70s, I just got really worried that I'd sort of swallowed the avant-garde pill, and somehow felt that avant-garde art and avant-garde politics, radical art, radical politics, had this very close relationship to each other, and that it was a kind of progressive movement. Indeed, that's what the artists said, that's what the critics were writing at that time. And then all of a sudden, it's a new spirit in painting. Artists like Georg Baselitz, who've been working since the beginning of the 60s, suddenly become very, very important. And of course I'd been aware of him from going to Germany and seeing things, but I mean, no one took him seriously outside Germany until 1979, when Rudi Fuchs did an exhibition in Eindhoven. And all of a sudden, this was the flavor of the month. And I just felt so uneasy. I mean, I liked some of Baselitz's work, but my question was, if he seems so good now, why didn't we know it earlier? What was it about our way of looking, about our knowledge, about the way we were being conditioned, that stopped us from knowing that? And so I basically thought, well, I think I have to screw up a lot of my education and throw it in the wastepaper basket, and start finding out for myself what I think is good, what I think is interesting, and firstly, get myself an education. So this exhibition was about getting an education. I was working with a very able doctoral student in Oxford who was Japanese, called Kazu Kaido, and we looked at 1945 to 1965, because that was the most vital time when Japanese artists were taking their discovery of surrealism from before World War II, continuing it in a lot of work, and then going off in many, many other directions. You can see Kusama Chair there from 1963 with the phalluses on. That, of course, was made in New York, but she was very much a Japanese artist. Donald Judd used to help her hold the canvas phalluses while she tipped the plaster into them. That's Domato, the black painting, Ushio Shinohara, this punk screen from 1964. Wonderful thing, that's on rough cardboard. Another view, Jiro Takamatsu there on the right, and Genpai Kasagawa. Another view. There's a whole nother floor of this show. So it was about 50 artists, going right back from the impacts of World War II and how they digested that, right through to the crazy avant-garde. And I wasn't so interested in the pop art. And we didn't even get involved with the Fluxus, because that was Yoko Ono was in it, in the film, but a very early fluxus of higher ed center and neo-Dada organizers was there, and this is a guy called Kiko Hata. That's the work of 1963, from Kyushu avant-garde. So, let's talk about values. I mean, what's good? And I've been working in Hong Kong a lot recently, and one of the depressing things about Hong Kong in particular, but large parts of Asia, is that people are very reductive. And they think that actually the market price fix up means that something's good, and this is the main connotation of value. I'm just showing a work by Gu and Da here. It's a long continuing work from 1963 called United Nations. It's made out of human hair. And he's someone who's had a very successful career. He was in the show that we made in Oxford in 1993 called Silent Energy, New Art from China. And this scale of the work, it comes out of the Cultural Revolution, out of the great sort of cultural manifestations, the theatricality of the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And somehow it continued on into the generation that matured after the end of the Cultural Revolution in 1976. And Gu Endar, as a young teenager, in fact, was a Red Guard, as were a number of the artists of his generation. But this is at the Hong Kong Art Fair, which is another reason I put it in there. So you have this mishmash of curated interventions. So this big thing, which almost can't be for sale, although you can see an Ai Weiwei bicycle piece in the back, which definitely is for sale. And so you've got a kind of museumalization, or at least a feeling of curatorship, which is now permeating nearly all of the big art fairs. And it's fine, no problem, the more the merrier. But when you've not really got strong public spaces, you haven't yet in Hong Kong, they're talking about M+, which will be a big sort of super mega gallery like they're building also in Abu Dhabi. So it'll be like an art supermarket, like Tate Modern, maybe even bigger. But it doesn't fill me full of joy there. But at least it will be a public space, I guess. As public as anything can be when it's managed by the Hong Kong government, which is managed by the Beijing, the Chinese government. So we're talking about different levels of autonomy and what is permissible and not permissible. And this is a discussion, I think, that is not just relating to China, it's actually relating to us all, and really where the world is at the moment. And I'm going to come on to that at the moment. Just showing you other works in the show. This, in fact, was one that I showed in the Kiev Biennale. It was showed for the first time there. It reoccurs in the Hong Kong Art Fair. Shen Xiaoming, really great artist. It's fragments of the first Chinese space rocket, and it's called "I Touch the Voice of God." So he bought these on the internet, and then he put in Braille, so riveted in Braille, a text from the Apocalypse out of the Bible. Well, this is a Chinese guy from Harbin, which used to be Manchuria, and he's touching the face of God. This is salt, white stuff. It's kind of strange poetic work. And he just doesn't do what he's supposed to do. I mean, Chinese artists aren't supposed to read the Apocalypse. He made a fantastic film called We Are Chinese, and it's of a Russian village, which is just the wrong side of the Amur River. So at the end of World War II, these people, maybe World War I, I'm not sure, probably World War I, these people became Chinese. They speak Russian very badly, they speak Chinese very badly, they have no work, there's no support for them, they were beaten up during the Cultural Revolution, and he's just made this 50-minute film about that village and this idea of Chineseness. You can imagine it's a little bit nationalistic in China at the moment. Can you relate to that? Yi Suk-hyun, a young Korean artist who works with porcelain, really art porcelain, which he finds on the scrap heaps, so it's discarded from master porcelain potters in Seoul, in the whole of Korea, and then she sticks them together. So I mean, you could say that Yoko Ono did this in her men piece in the 60s, but the men piece is really a participatory thing, where the crockery is all beaten up and then the visitors get to stick it together. So it's a way of mending and healing. But she does this, and she puts this gold epoxy glue and then the gold leaf over the epoxy glue, which is what you traditionally do when you mend old porcelain. So I mean, she's following that tradition. And she does it herself. So it's not so much about healing, it's actually about survival. It's about new forms of life after survival. New forms of beauty, different forms of beauty, perhaps beyond which you could ever imagine. And then Zhao Zhao, young pupil of Ai Weiwei. And I'm not sure, I don't think this is any good or not, to be honest. You can see the process of him making this work. It starts with a 200-year-old Buddha there. Take it up, sew it up. You know, Ai Weiwei drops these Han period pots and stuff and covers them with car paint. And then he makes it into that. So it's this idea of transmutation of matter. After all, we're all made of stars. And he paints it gold, so it becomes very special. But other artists, and not just in China, this is Shao Yingyong and Mu Qian, a couple, have been looking at money, I mean value from this point of view. And this is 30 works, really looking at different manifestations of Chinese currency, whether it's the People's Republic of China or the Republic of China, ever since 1911, when it was founded. From the point of view of the style of it, what it means, what it represents, it's produced in workshops you can hardly find now, and that this is very fine hand embroidery. So it's almost impossible to find this kind of craftsmanship now. And they're translucent. They're large and they're translucent. They blow in the wind. They have a kind of melancholy to them, and a value, and a romanticism, and a revolutionary quality. There's Zhou Enlai, at his time of the Cultural Revolution. And then Mesha Gaba, an artist from Benin, so he's African. This is a piece called Brazilian Bank, which has been bought by the City Museum Art Gallery in Bristol in the UK. And he found this framework, this kind of money stall in Sao Paulo, except it looks as though it comes from Africa. I assumed it had come from Africa. Anyway, the idea for it came in Brazil. They had mega inflation in the 1970s and 80s, so any amount of money was being printed in very, very high denomination notes. And in fact, all the money here from many, many different countries, a coin and notes, is obsolete. So it's no longer valid. It's completely worthless. So he's really looking at the value of the note. And in fact, no longer do notes have any relationship to any material that has value. All money is virtual. And being African, he's used to being treated somewhat as if he's a primitive savage. Not that he is in the slightest bit. But he's really making the point that no, the belief system, the primitiveness is in people who believe that these little bits of paper are actually worth anything. And how does the world economy work? How does all this fit together? So the Brazilian bank could be any bank. It could be any system of world economy at the moment. This work, in fact, was made in 2006. And it's strangely prophetic, and I think that a lot of artists do manage to anticipate events, strangely prophetic of the events of 2008 and afterwards, of the really collapse of the world economy. And in fact, the world economy only continues because a few governments are prepared to believe that it should continue in that way, and they're prepared to use our money to shore it up. I just wanted to flick from that really to completely another story, which is a show I did earlier this year called Pandemonium, media art from Shanghai, and Momentum, which is a space in the Battalion in Berlin. And this was really looking at Shanghai as a center of media art in China, which in fact it is. And the idea of the panda, the cliche of cuddly China and cultural diplomacy, and pandemonium, putting these two together, because it is a kind of balagan, what the Russians call balagan, a kind of crazy way of looking at the world, which has actually gone far beyond the more conventional ways many painters, Chinese painters, have worked. So this is Zhang Pei Li, the father of video art in China, a document on hygiene #3. Long before bird flu, but this guy is washing a chicken, and that's the whole subject of it. But it did follow on a very serious outbreak of hepatitis, which killed several hundreds of thousands of people in China at that time. But it was 1991, and all knowledge of it was suppressed in the media. So just looking at some of the things one does, and the ways of showing art. This was shown in the old chapel in the Battalion, and how to put video art together and use spaces. Because I think one of the things we have to deal with, and I think one of the things you have to deal with in this building, is its history, its ghosts. And the thing is to get the ghosts and the history to work for you and with you rather than against you. So that's really to know how you're doing things and why you're doing them, and to use these associations. So I'll just show you very quickly. There were 15 artists and 16 artists in the show. And so you have a kind of intertextuality of the images. The one big one where the altar would have been, let's get back to there, was the one that was the dominant sound. The others were all on headsets. It takes a bit of, you need good installers to do it, but yeah, you can do it. Now we have some formatting issues, but I really now want to come on to A Time for Dreams. And this is the 4th Biennale of Young Art, which took place in Moscow this June, July and August, and I was the artistic director of that. And young art for me, I mean, isn't really a category, but I must say it was a very interesting problem. Because it's artists the age of 35 and younger. So, I mean, it's great to have the opportunity to look at a lot of young artists. And I looked at well over 3,500 portfolios from all over the world. But it struck me that, what do young artists have? I mean, what makes them young? Or how are they different from any other artists? And I guess it is that they don't really feel responsible for the world in which they find themselves. In fact, they're not. They're innocent of the conditions within which they're born and have to grow up. And as you can tell, I'm of a certain age. And when I was young, a very young teenager, Martin Luther King made this famous speech, "I have a dream." And it resonated across the world, all over the world. And he said many other things. The hope of a secure and livable world lies with disciplined nonconformists who are dedicated to justice, peace, and brotherhood. Yeah, it's still true. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Absolutely. And yeah, people who say things like that get into trouble. And so thinking about the 60s, which a lot of people romanticize, and particularly younger curators. I remember the Utopia station in Venice Biennale, oh God, it must have been 10 years ago. A really romantic view of the 60s. Now, what I feel about the 60s is it was interesting, explainable, it's very much of its time, but it failed. And it failed for very good reasons. Because it wasn't worked out. Utopias don't work. Idealism alone, with non-conformism, disciplined non-conformism, what you need. You don't need sloppy political thinkers who aren't prepared to work and organize. And we must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-orientated society to a person-orientated society. Where machines and computers and profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered, as true now as it was in 1963, when Martin Luther King said it, sadly. So this is the challenge for... I'll do what I can, but I haven't got much time left, unfortunately. It was a show of 64 individual artists and collectives showing 120 works from 30 different countries. 84 artists in all, and 23 of them from Russia. Chosen from well over 3,000 submissions. So I wanted to try and tie this back for the Russian public into things that they would recognize. You all know this, it's a great sculpture. And here we go, Olga Kreuzer. It's a performance she made called Point of Support. She made it repeatedly throughout the period of the exhibition. As you can see, it's raining now. Well, the VDNH, the Exhibition of Economic Achievement in Moscow, the main entrance. Well, this Denis Rudolph, the portal, gift shop. This is the gift shop to the portal, and it's a gate to heaven or hell. And so the artist, it's a military tent, a Russian military tent that he found in Berlin and took back to Moscow. Actually, stinky thing it was. And he put certain things in there. And these are images of people, missing children, taken off the internet. That's the form in which he showed it in Moscow. We're back at VDNH, the Fountain of Friendship, all the different republics are there. And we had a fountain at the opening of our exhibition too, there. Ivan Plush from St. Petersburg. The Triumph of Fun. It's oil barrels all spurting out in different directions. And there it is again. Not spurting at that time, but it did spurt. And you can see Rudolph's gate to heaven or hell. And the big photograph on the side is the space shuttle, which exploded in 2001, losing all the crew. Oh, we all know El Lisitsky and his wonderful constructivist Tribune. Well, here we go. This is the Zip Group from Krasnodar. It's an observation tower, and it's part of their zone of civil dissent. And these are made to be actually used in demonstrations. That's it, constructed outside the museum. And these are different elements they have. They have the tower, they have the Automat, Rodina, motherland. They have this tank, they call it a tank, but a bureau of independent picketing, which enables you to go right up to the front lines with your different slogans. They can't hit you, the police. And then there's the escape, the mode of escape. And then they have a fist of revolution, which is for beating down doors to get through them. Oh, a good precedence for this. Gustav Klusitz has kiosk of 1922. But there you go, the BOP, the booth for the one-man picket. In action, in a demonstration. In fact, it was arrested, returned to the artists 1 year later. And then they had a model inside and also videos of these things in action. And here's the model of the kind of ideal move of the demonstrators and how to avoid the police. And the whole thing was actually how to avoid the police. It was used in Perm and also in Krasnodar and is exhibited as an artwork. This is a painting by Veronika Jacic-Savo, based in Budapest. Don't dream it's over. There's a kind of double meaning. So the building was an early 19th century military building. This is the top floor of it, which had been converted to store Red Army jeeps. And now it's part of the Museum of Moscow. These are two young artists from Nizhny Novgorod, formerly Gorky, and they're building a wooden house. Artem Filatov and Vladimir Shenishev. And that's what they built in the galleries. And these houses are all taken, the wood for this house is taken from many, many different wooden houses in Nizhny Novgorod, where they're tearing down the buildings. So the beautiful early 19th century wooden architecture of Nizhny Novgorod, the great Volga town, the Volga city, is now being demolished cynically for redevelopment and putting horrible stuff in its place. This is a mural, a couple of murals, which was painted on site by Yuri Kensaku, who is a young artist from Thailand, called Hot Hot Sweet Dream. It's about 10 meters wide. And so she does the kind of thing she always does, but she brought in the Swan Lake motif here and other, what she thought were Russian motifs. That's the finished item. Oh, a kind of dream of Russia, a Thai woman's dream of Russia. Bahut Bubikanova, born in Kazakhstan, these images of women, young women, and she frames them in the mythology of Central Asia, the peri, this creature from firstly Persian mythology, but all over that area, half bird, half woman, both malicious and also healing, positive. It's also from the same series. Lu Yang, one of the young lady artists from the Pandemonium exhibition. It's an animation called Uterus Man, gigantic uterus man. So yeah, it's interesting to put the two ideas together. Here, and it's sort of like a video game and a kind of space fantasy. So it goes through different stages. This is the ovum light wave attack. And of course, uterus man is not one sex or the other, as you might imagine. I mean, men don't generally have uteruses. The baby weapon, you can see she uses it as a kind of aggressive action. Sanitary pad skateboard. And blood energy altitude flying. So their menstrual blood is being expelled to provide the jet power for her flying, her superpowers. Chen Zhou, born in Zhejiang but working in Beijing, same kind of age as Lu Yang. It's a video called Spanking the Maid. It's the title of a novel by the American novelist called Robert Coover. It's a novella, short book. No maids in it, unfortunately, and very little spanking. But what you have is this bodybuilder working out in the sort of fantastic gym with these surrealist objects. It's a large banana on the floor. And then suddenly these texts come out. So it's a very strange, rather elegiac and upsetting film. Li Ran, born in '86 in Hubei, also working in Beijing. Another modern artist. So his father was a painter. So he made this film and he acts the role himself as a modern artist. And he's sort of a very romantic painter, but he's very much aware that he's a non-Western painter. So he frames this within the context of an exhibition in London's Hayward Gallery in the 1980s, organized by Russian Arim, which is about the non-Western art. So I mean, it's extremely aware of world cultural politics. He also made this, called From the Truck Driver to the Commissar of the Mounted Troops. He plays the leading role in this as well. It's based on a mid-1950s Soviet film which was played in China, so people all knew about this. And he plays his role. He has the very romantic music that you have, and he makes up all the sort of fake dialogue for it. It's extremely authentic. Sun Shun, another video animation. Some actions which haven't been defined yet in the revolution. Show you some quick images. Very, very cruel, strange, surrealistic images. It's an animation made by woodblocks. So basically, for each different image, he has to cut a new block or modify an existing block. So I mean, it's a very, very laborious way of making an animation. I mean, it's usually, when you look at Kentridge's things, he's smudging and rubbing out all the time. You know, it's a very fluid way of making it. This is really perverse. Yulen Santana, Colombian artist living in Beijing. It's not a nightmare, and he's really looking at student demonstrations at the University of Bogota when they put up this image of Che, and then the police come in. And it's a series of really looking at student power now. Mark Shah, a female artist from Beijing. This is called Rainbow. Basically what you see are these wine glasses, and slowly they start to be filled up with this material. And then you see these legs, and the legs of ballet dancers in these white tights, yet they're splashed. And really what it is, they're wearing these ice skates, and they're mashing up these tomatoes. Anastasia Pereva from Arkhangelsk. It's a video installation called She Has To. And it's really also about gender issues from a female point of view, and the way how women submit themselves to male violence. She's showing, this is how she set it up, she's edited a series of popular Russian TV programs in which women come on. It's like Jerry Springer, and they say they have problems with their partners, and you know, they explain in great detail. And it's a panel of women who answer their questions and advise them. And they always said, well, did you cook him a good meal? Do you do the laundry regularly? I mean, it's unbelievable, all the shit these people come up with. And so she cuts these and, you know, runs them one after another very quickly into cutting, and actually turns the voices into some kind of monstrous quality as well, through distortion. Where he'd like to come back and see me. So yeah, all the adoring, uncritical audience. Gaisha Madanova, also a Kazakh artist, a series of photographs called The Syndrome of Learned Helplessness. Now this is from a kind of phys called manual from the 1990s. So she's taken these photographs. But it's a theory that was popularized in the 60s that people who are in possible situations, they learn how to behave in a kind of helpless way to get them through those impossible situations. And when the outside conditions, that situation is removed, they continue to behave in the same way. It's a kind of version of Stockholm Syndrome. Anyway, she made this whole suite of photographs with this title, suggesting that these were exercises for the syndrome of learned helplessness. Anastina Troimund, one of the artists suggested to me by Bojana Pejić. Loser, it's a photo and video installation, and it's based on a work by Kai Kailo, Estonian artist from 1992, I think, or 3, in which she speaks as if she's talking to a TV audience, and she describes her life as an artist in Estonia, like she makes no money and she has no man, all these things. And there's canned studio laughter after each terrible, pathetic statement she makes. Well, here the boot is on the other foot. She's dressed up as, in this case, Laurie, who's a closeted gay making homophobic comments, and saying how he's really happy and he goes out with the guys and drinks such a thing, and people laugh at the end of these statements. So you know, it's kind of doubly cutting. That's Veikko, who works in Finland and hates immigrants. And there she is, Peter. That's another character, equally screwed up. Christian Nemeth, who's one of the artists from Slovakia, his film The Bars, which is really a confession that he made. He confessed to the priest, and his sin that he confessed was that he was homosexual, and he was not given absolution. And really, as the film progresses, starts by focusing on the cross, the symbol of suffering and redemption. But as there's no redemption or confession allowed, it really ends on the bars, which actually close off the chancel of the church and obliterate the cross. Versha Harris from Barbados, a 5-channel video installation. They say you can dream a thing more than once. Really, she's created an imaginative world around Disney. She's done her own version of Disney characters. So there's a kind of Disney soundtrack cut in to other things that she's made. Kate Elliott from Oxford. The study of Peter Pan. It's a photographic study of a young boy on the edge of becoming a man. But that's the Peter Pan, the boy who would never grow up, who was neither a child nor a grown-up. So that was the photographs. And then a video. I think it was about 12 minutes long. And just a single take of him, of his face, and how it changes under the scrutiny of that. Natalia Maximova, a Moscow artist, just graduated from the Rodchenko School there, 3 works from the series, and I think there's about 15 in the series, called True Self. And I have an apology to make to her and also to the sitters that she has given the names of the people, their names in, and also their situation, their description of themselves, because these are all people who are transsexuals, who have moved from one sex to the other, who are not happy, you know, their biological sex is not the same thing as their gender. And either they're full or on the way to that. So I'm just showing you three examples. And these are people all over Russia that she's photographed. So this guy started off as a woman. You can see the Japanese print and the Oscar Wilde. And they're all as they want to be shown. I mean, she's not forcing anything on these people. So I'm sorry you haven't got the text for that. I need to get it. I haven't got it myself, so I must get it. Eric Pans was a New York Iranian artist, and this is a video work which he showed on the stairway in classical Farsi. So the Farsi of ancient Persian poetry, and Dream a Little Dream, Dream a Little Dream from Me. It's an American romantic song of the 1930s. Now this is the Photoshop version of these two young artists, young painters from Moscow. They graduated from the Surikov School, which is the most academic school in Moscow. And then they made a painting based on this. As you can see, it's 5 meters high. This painting, so it's 10 meters wide. And it says bandits to the rubbish. So what you have in the background is these gopniks. You know? Gopniks are the new thugs, the new Russians, the guys who go around beating up gays and Jews and blacks. Great supporters of Putin. They're also great supporters of very obviously present in parts of the Ukraine as well. So they're not only Russian. But, and then you've got a woman from Femen, one of the girls from Femen, and she was holding up that thing in a demonstration. So they kind of collages together, and then painted it. It's sort of huge scale. Daniel Boyd from Australia, who's an Aboriginal artist. And as you know, the whole idea of dreaming is very important to Indigenous people in Australia. It's about their identity as a group, also their individual identities, and related to their landscape. But Daniel's very much an urban guy. He's not living in a small community out in the desert. And he's also very much concerned with the effects of colonialization on the whole area. These are relating to the Southern Pacific as well as to Australia. So I mean that the subject for him and his relatives, the disastrous effects of colonization, is there on it. But the thing is, it's not only to Australia and the Pacific, but all over to Indigenous people everywhere. Pratip Sukhothai, it's a work called Commodity. And these are religious lockets that you buy, and taxi drivers have them. They're really quite expensive. I mean, an old one will fetch a huge amount of money. But this is the work. That's 6 meters wide. And when you get up close, that's what you see. But the subject is the commodification of religion, of spirituality, of belief. Pavel Delmov, Moscow-based artist. These are views of the suburbs. So strange beauty, perhaps, but also the kind of desolation of the edges of the city. I mean, it's a 19th century subject, you could say, but done in a different way. I actually like these very much. Heba Amin, Egyptian artist, and really based around the Arab Spring, the Egyptian revolution of 2011. The government stopped the internet, and so people couldn't communicate with what was going on in Tahrir Square. So what people did was they used Twitter. And so people started ringing in from all over the area, Libya as well, and Lebanon, and giving messages to the people demonstrating in Tahrir Square. She's showing solidarity. So there's an archive of those, and she chose some of these messages, which are full of hope and full of defiance. And she really shows the images now of these desolate buildings in the center of Cairo. So, referring back to this idea of idealism lost, revolution failed, the 60s and now. He was very eloquent. He's a Korean artist, actually studying in the Weimar, in the Bauhaus school, looking at environmental issues, reversing the summer. There'd been a huge chemical spill there, which I think 5 or 6 people had died, many people had got ill with it, and she went and shot all the dead things. Lots of livestock had died as well, and then tried to bring it back to life by using these lights. So you had this kind of flickering between the dead and a kind of pseudo-life, reversing the summer, going back in time. Francesca Klotz, Dresden. This is taken from a newspaper photograph of Fukushima, immediately after the tsunami and the nuclear meltdown. So these are the people in the nuclear power station who were helping. But she also made pictures of the Tunguska meteorite impact. This is from 1908 in Siberia. So it was a catastrophic meteorite impact, which I don't think killed anyone because it was so far away from where anyone was living. But this is how it looks today. Still a kind of wasteland. So it's from the series of apocalyptic landscapes. Well, she's doing a kind of redemptive landscape. This is called Crucifixion. And very, very beautiful oil paintings. Tenzin Rigdol, born in Kathmandu, but ethnically Tibetan. My World is Your Blind Spot, relating to the self-immolation of monks at the moment under the Chinese government. And Oleg Ustinov, it's called Administration. He's done a kind of corner of a very boring housing block in Moscow. And he made a notice and posted this up in several housing blocks. And it says, "Dear residents, according to data from observations carried out in your housing estate, such and such, 3 persons of non-traditional sexual orientation, gays, lesbians, have been identified in your part of the building. At the moment, these persons are subject to investigative and operative measures. Now, we ask you to be particularly vigilant in your dealings with persons suspected of propagating homosexuality." Anyway, and then you've got to look out, not just by wearing extravagant clothes or behaving conventionally, but also indirectly, gradually, carrying out their propaganda work into the building of many years. Homosexuals might be wearing plain clothes and looking like you, and may be pleasant to talk to and well acquainted with you. So if you suspect anyone propagating homosexuality, immediately inform the district representatives of the organs of internal affairs, or call these numbers. Okay, these numbers was the town hall, the local town hall. So all of a sudden, the town hall gets these phone calls, and fair enough, about 50% were complaining, saying, "What the hell are you doing this? You know, this is an infringement of civil liberties you should not be doing." Others were reporting. So then it gets to the media, the newspapers and the TV. And the other side of this booth has the newspapers and the videos where they're reporting on this strange effect of who has written this strange notice and set it out, and what is going on here. So it becomes a whole sort of media circus. Ivan Chabrovsky made a series of live performances and films from this, based on photographs of violent demonstrations in Russia, but also in Germany and elsewhere. And so these tableaus are made up of one person goes and then 2 join them, and slowly they build up it and sort of end up there. And it's really a scene of terrible violence. And it becomes still almost made beautiful, at least made strange and alienated. Recycle, a Russian group, again living in Krasnodar, like the Zip group. It's called the Keys of Paradise. It's like a classical sarcophagus. It's made of a mesh, plastic mesh, and it's in relief. And it's people queuing in a supermarket for their commodities, the new Russia, the new gods. Tony Schmaler, just over the border in Vienna, she's born in Hamburg, but she lives in Vienna, these strange objects which look as though they're for exercising, they're sort of gym machines. This is called a queening machine. And they're really about desire, the expenditure of desire. But you can't fool a park. You can't really translate, what is it? It's a park for directions of being led. So there's a degree of masochism here, or at least maybe of sadism, implicit sadism in the people who operate these machines. Very beautifully made with this zinc and then powdered car paint finish. So this is a lace curtain, 9 meters wide. And it says someone else on it, embroidered. It's all from old lace. And that's it installed in the show, so we were able to see things through it. But then, when you get closer, this word "you" comes up. But it's actually about responsibility. That people taking responsibility for whatever it is, politics, or it's kind of, oh well, it's them. They should do it. Or is it you? I mean, so responsibility begins with the individual. Adela Jucic and Lana Jama. Thank you, Jmajčanin from Sarajevo. I never talk about the war again. In which the video, which lasts nearly 10 minutes, this is all they say to each other. They say it in many, many different ways. So in a sense it's completely meaningless interchange, which is also funny and tragic. Then the last 2 images, really, this Albert Samreth, who was born in Long Beach. Long Beach is a Cambodian enclave, so he's a kid of the Cambodian refugees who went to America. And he made an installation called An Act of God. So that's a view of a little jungle that he set up in the space with a parrot. And the idea is that the parrot picks up all the words randomly, firstly things he already knows or she already knows, and from the radio in the space. And the act of God is the repeating of these things, of these noises and symbols, randomly. So at the other end of the space was another jungle, a virtual jungle, not the real one, in which the parrot was sitting in. The Forest Speaks Back, that's a sketch of the installation by Donna Ong from Singapore. And she's really taken the images of jungle from 18th and 19th century books on tropical jungles and montage these together. So the last work was made by a young Chinese artist living in Germany, and it's called I Dated a Guy in Buchenwald. And it's just a note, the words of the note he got back after his date. I'd lost faith in mankind. And one day I decided to go to Buchenwald with this, and once inside the camp, he kissed me with this guy. Once inside the camp, he kissed me and helped me to find the oak tree. Then I knew there was hope, for I just experienced human warmth, where I least expected to. Francois. And that was the work. Thank you.
Pôsobila prvých 15 rokov ako kurátorka študentského kultúrneho centra. Tiež robila domáce aj medzinárodné výstavy. Následne časť tohto času bola zároveň šéfredaktorkou časopisu Moment, časopisu na zameraní na umeleckú teóriu. Pre nás je známa ako šéf-kurátorka projektu After the Wall, ktorá sa v roku 1999 uskutočnila v Múzeu moderného umenia v Štokholme, následne s reprízou v Ludwigovom múzeu v Budapešti a v Hamburger Bahnhof v Berlíne. So you see some people are going to drink. Taktiež pre nás dôležitou bola kurátorkou dôležitej výstavy Gender Check, ktorá sa v roku 2008 uskutočnila vo Viedni. Gender Check Femininity and Masculinity in the Art of Eastern Europe. Následne o 2 roky neskôr zostavila téme Reader, ktorý hovorí o umeleckej teórii východnej Európy. And both of these guests, obidva naši vzácni hostia sú dnes pre nás významní, are important for us right now because they are members of our curatorial board, sú členmi našej kurátorskej rady v Bratislava. So welcome and it's your turn.
I must use the mic because of the translation, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Juraj and Gregor, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and really, congratulations. I'm joining David's opinion. It's it's excellent exhibition. It's the first exhibition you did here. Really, congratulations. And we hope all it will go in this direction. And thank you really also for inviting us into the board. So I hope it's just the beginning of a nice friendship. Okay, I have to tell you the truth now. I lived until December 1990 in Belgrade, and then I moved to Berlin in 91, and I was working as a freelance after I left my full-time job in Belgrade, in Student Cultural Center. It was our Institute of Contemporary Art. And then I live in Berlin as a freelance, you know, sometimes rent could be paid, sometimes rent can't be paid. In any case, I start with this introduction because my career in the West started with men. And one of these men is David Elliott. Because he invited me in 97 to join the project After the Wall, and I was chair curator and guest of Moderna Musette, and the exhibition was done in cooperation with David Elliott and another colleague from Moderna Musette, Iris Müller-Westermann. So after that, there were like low period and better period, and as a freelance, you know, I sit on 3 chairs, and sometimes I'm without a chair. So living as somebody coming from our areas in the West, as a freelance, so sometimes I'm doing teaching, sometimes and I'm happier when I can curate exhibitions. And I also like very much to write about art, because for me, writing about art is a way of learning about the artist. So last artist, Slovakian artist I wrote about is Ilona Nek, present here. Thank you, Ilona. Good Girl exhibition I'm going to present you today did not exist. What I mean is, still there is no catalog. And if we don't print something or we don't make a website, it's invisible. Nevertheless, colleague with whom I produced this exhibition in Bucharest, Olivia Mitis, is trying now to publish catalog, because David probably never had this kind of problems, but sometimes as a guest curator in an art institution which has a structure and curators, sometimes your work is difficult, sometimes it's not. In Moderna Musette, I had a wonderful life. In NAC, it was so-and-so, and without the help of Mr. Oreveanu, the director of the institution, this exhibition would never happen. Okay. It all happened because of Ceausescu. Kalindan, who is a Romanian artist, he was member of this group Subreal, was about to establish with some colleagues in Bucharest, New European College, and they wanted me to be in their board. So at one, I don't know, in 2011, I was invited to make a series of lectures, and since first time I went to Bucharest because of After the Wall, I couldn't see Ceausescu Palace. I wanted to see a portrait of Ceausescu and Elena owned by the museum NAC, because it must belong to national art, whatever it means, you know, it belongs to NAC connection. And coming there with also one artist who is also as faithful as Ilona, Marilena Preda Sank, I went to the museum, met Mr. Oreveanu, and after watching Ceausescu's portrait, you know, Marilena said, why don't you make us exhibition of Romanian women artists? Because she's a feminist, she teaches at Art Academy in Bucharest, and she always wanted somebody to make exhibition about Romanian women artists, and nobody wanted to do so. I said, okay. The idea started, let's say, we will make like 10 Romanian artists trying to cover also the period of the 70s, blah, blah, blah. We started with 10, and we finished with international exhibition with 65 artists. And since the beginning, it was decided half of them should have been Romanian, also some artists from the 70s, like Jeta Bratescu and Ana Lapuș and so on, and 33 girls were from the outside. Good. This is museum, this is NAC, and probably you know, Museum of Contemporary Art is part of former Ceausescu Palace. It's the backside. The problem with the location of the exhibition was that this building is built on people's bones, you know, in order to build this palace, which is almost, I think, as big or even larger than Pentagon. Ceausescu destroyed half of the village, not half, sorry, one important old district of the village, and built this monster, and then a decision was made to found Museum of Contemporary Art in Bucharest. Mr. Oreveanu, who was the founder of the institution, finally opted to use 3 floors, part of Ceausescu backside of the building. In front side today, Romanian parliament is having a seat. So, Dan Perjorci and Lia Perjorci and a couple of other artists. It was a big scandal in the 90s concerning this institution, because Dan and Lea believed really this building and the institution, Ceausescu building, and then the Museum of Contemporary Art built there, it's a place, as David mentioned, a house with many ghosts or bones. So I couldn't get 3 artists to take part in this exhibition, and I respect them enormously. Lia Perjorci is one of them, because for me she was the first to start with. She refused to take part in this exhibition. She and then they never stepped into this building. The other interesting artist, whom slide, I'm sorry, I don't have, is Alexandra Pejić, whom I met a couple of years ago. She comes from dance. And in fact, with Pejić and Pelamus, they represented Romania at the last Venice Biennale, when they danced every day during the working hour of the Venice Biennale. They reconstructed through dance artworks that have been exhibited over time at the Venice Biennale. So she doesn't come from visual art, she comes from movement, from body, from dance. And she really did some interesting works about monument in Bucharest. So I asked Alexandra, would you take part in this exhibition? And she said, Bojana, I would love to. I accept your concept, because each artist got the concept, you know, so they have to know my dream, you know, my dream about the exhibition. Then Alexandra said, Bojana, I will take part, but I have to do something with this building. Since it is the Museum of Contemporary Art, I have a problem with this building. So I said, you decide whatever you do, I would like very much that you are in the exhibition. And since where we stand now, let's say 300 meters from this Ceausescu. This is like a palais de communist palace. They are building the biggest Christian Orthodox cathedral in the Balkans. They even believe it will be bigger than the Russian one. So you have old ideology, now you have a new ideology, and Alexandra said, the artists, performers have said, I have to do something with it. And she did incredible thing. Only artists can come to this idea. She said, I'm going to do what is the word, pèlerinage? What people do, pilgrimage, you know, when people go, you know, in France there is this Madonna appearing, so people are walking or moving on their knees. So she started to walk in front of the Parliament building, ex-Ceausescu building. She walked all around and walked on the street where the new church was like 1 meter high already, and Ceausescu building. So it was about 15 minutes. She really walked on her knees, and she said, I have to do something against this with my own body. It was really nothing spectacular. It was really personal but professional decision as well. You know, I will take part if you do. So most of the artists have been invited with work that I knew, and also some Romanian artists were produced. So I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm sorry. This is Olivia and myself. She always wanted that we make that we have a portrait. This was at the open exhibition. Olivia Mitis is let's say younger curator from Bucharest. She does incredible things. International Graphic Biennale, where people it happens every second year. Terribly engaged curator, and also one of her texts is published in our gender check reader. So the person from the back is Marilena Predasang, the artist whose dream was to have a women's exhibition. So this was, okay, this is Marilena over there, and we are standing in front of the Turkish artist. Okay, she will come later. Good. This is Mr. Oreveanu, the director of NAC. Without him, nothing worked there, and since 3 girls were really like declared feminists, 2 curators and the artist, I call him the 4th feminist, because being a guest curator in this institution was really not my best, it was not the best time of my life. But Mr. Oreveanu did everything that exhibition happens, really. He was fighting. Nobody, I don't like to gossip about institutions, but really except 2 people, nobody else wanted to help, because the idea was there are no feminists in Romania, you know, so concerning the idea of feminism. So Mihail died during the exhibition. He got a heart attack, so he was not with us when we had the symposium at the end of the exhibition. So there were many dilemmas since the very beginning. First, the title. What does it mean, good girls? It's just banal. What does it mean? Nya, nya, nya. And they have a beautiful term. They didn't want to use it, but I insisted. In Romanian they call it fete bune, but it is like a cheap girl, you know. And so I said, there is a little bit history, at least in my perception of this term. There was this Bad Girls exhibition, 94, in New York, in the new museum, curated by Marsha Tucker on the west side, and another Marsha, I forgot the other name, on the east coast. So Bad Girl exhibition, 94, about, you know, it was the term, bad painting, coming from the 80s and so on. So there was this historical exhibition, Bad Girls, indicatively 94, New York. There was maybe 1 black and 1 Mexican woman artist. Then there was one in a nice exhibition. I only have a catalog by my colleague, co-curated by my colleague from Berlin, Katrin Becker. No more bad girls, question mark. And she really, Katrin and her colleague from Vienna, they really had like a more global perspective. And then knowing this, I said, you know, why can't we use good girls? Because, you know, in none of our countries, and probably, I mean, some people here would know, you know, people are not very happy, or even artists, you know, with the term feminist and feminist, you know. I mean, I met very few younger artists, except Annette Echisa and Lucia Tratskova, who declare themselves, okay, we are feminists. There are not so many young artists of the generation saying, okay. Similar is probably with art history and research, but okay. So, and for me it was important to have a little, somehow positive meaning, good girls, and then. Subtitle is, let's say, more serious, where I try to direct thematically. Not thematically, there are three concepts in this exhibition: power, memory, and desire. And then, you know, the question, the question is, there were also questions, is it, how we are going to call it? Is it exhibition of women artists? Is it exhibition of feminine artists? Or is it feminist exhibition? Not of all artists, and this is common, you know, if you watch these big exhibitions in 2007, back, feminist revolution, global feminisms and so on. Also curators state about the artists they invited to take the show. Not all artists believe that they are feminists, that they do feminist work, but nevertheless they take part in exhibition having the term feminist in the title. So also, I mean, if you do an exhibition of women artists, I mean, one has to think about this type of problems. So I resolved problem for myself when I wrote the text for the catalog, which will come. So for me would be this it was a quotation by Barbara Kruger from 87, but somehow since second wave of feminism, since the 70s, there is always these three notions: feminine, feminist, women's, and so on. So women's, for me, would be women's memory, feminine desire, and the feminist critique of power. This would be for me like definition of what we had in the exhibition. So this is now no time to read Barbara Kruger. Okay, so this was the poster. Okay, Romanian art. We had some works from the 70s, but foreign artists. There were like 33. I was very correct, politically correct, to have, let's say, half from our region and half from the Western region. The dream was, of course, to have Japanese artists. The budget was so small that I knew in the beginning what we have as works, material work, so to say, sculpture or painting, we take from Romania, although we imported some works from Turkey and from Kiev. But mainly we had photographic works and videos, you know, and there is probably too much video in the show, but I mean, this was a compromise you have to do. And then mainly foreign works are produced, let's say, like 8 or 9 years. So the exhibition starts in the elevator, you know, but my experience when I started, when I looked, they published a lot Romanians. But I'm sorry to say, not only feminist art theory is really not on very desirable level, if you ask me. And when I started to look at the works, there was so much. I was sick of looking at these images, you know, identity politics. So I saw so many self-portraits that I thought, okay, still the girls are dealing with the work with the theme, you know, that was hot in the 80s, you know. Today there were all sort of construction and deconstruction of beauty. I was a little bit tired, but then to research, you know, you really discover feminist work. And this is this fantastic group of 2 artists, Bureau of Melodramatic Research, immediately you like the title, founded and run by these 2 artists, Irina and Alina. And their work started already in the elevator, because in some project and also in the form of newspaper, they were dealing with the problem in most socialist countries, and this is abortion, you know. So Christian Orthodox Church in Romania is doing a very tough campaign in order to ban abortion in Romania. I don't have time now to tell you how hot was issue of abortion in Romania during Ceausescu time, because maybe somebody saw this film, 3 months, 40 days or something, you know. Ceausescu, it was a law that Romanian nation has to be, Romanian communist nation has to be larger, so women were forbidden to abort. If somebody would do it secretly, she could be sentenced to 7-year prison. So after factory work was finished in the factory, a group of women were taken to gynecological examination, and if some of them were pregnant, they were forced to keep the child, you know. So new ideology now with the church, which is very strong in Bucharest. I mean, every second building is the church, and when you go with the taxi driver, they're all cross, but they pass with when we pass a church, you know. This was for me a shock. Myself still don't do it. So this Radio Pro-Life is, and this is like their logo. It's still a living radio, and they are really fighting this activity of the radio is preserving life, but not in this religious church sense to keep the fetus, to preserve life in any form. For instance, you know, also to preserve life of animals, you know, because these stray dogs that go around Bucharest, you know, they killed them. They killed them because they don't want to sterilize them, you know. So there are many problems. And then Irina and Alina, they covered the elevator completely with black paper. And they left only one small window, and when you drive to the window, you see the foundation of the church being built, you know. So this was the first work. Plus, first, which I liked, I always wanted to have a work in the elevator, plus with sound, so you could hear the radio while you come to the show. So, okay, this was, so. We occupied 2 levels. I mean, Mr. Orevano told us that we can have 2 levels of division. It was about 2,000 square meters. Okay, 64 participating girls, and one work was produced in collaboration. So this would be like a plan, you know. Since because of the budget, we could not build anything. So my idea was just this. If you see these 4 walls in the middle, this was built because of Gürsin Karamustafa. And on the left side, you see these 3 rooms where we projected video. So this was the only intervention, the cheapest possible. So this was the entrance of the exhibition. First level, where we had like sort of, you know, you cannot divine. Some works have elements of power and desire, sensuality, memory. So, but more or less, you know, more works were just like distributed according to the dominant concept artists deal with. Okay, this was one of my favorite pieces. Now when we talk about kitsch, Susanna Dan, a painter, you know, this was very old painting, and this was like a message, you know, at the beginning, well behaved, women rarely make history, and it is true, if you ask me, sorry. And then this is work by Marilena. We wanted to put it outside, but it was not possible, so it was probably, but it is a sort of manifesto. The work is called Fist, and it's a engaged work in the sense that the text written in this video, which you don't see, deals with her problem at the art academy, which she had as a professor there, you know, because she wanted to introduce some changes, and this was not allowed, so this is the Fist to you, you know, it was. And this is almost the first work you see exhibition. It's also a Romanian artist who lives in Berlin, and it's beautiful, beautiful work. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a curator, so each work for me is beautiful. Anka, and the title is Invention of the Time Past as Carpet. It's a carpet which is black. I mean, it's a bad slide, but unfinished, you know. As time passes, then the carpet becomes bigger and bigger, and this is what still, this is non-lived time, what is so below, and also concerning the textile, you have a textile triennial here in this country, it would be one work probably to be shown here. Then of course, my usual suspect, Sanja Iveković, this women at work, sunglasses, I don't know whether you know this work, sunglasses, it's a Sanja, this Iveković from Croatia, from Zagreb. This is collage montage. She uses advertisement. She steals, in fact, she appropriates our advertisement from fashion magazines. And below, okay, this all is advertisement for sunglasses, but the text you read is a text experience of a real woman who was abused at home, beaten, victim of home violence, and you read her real story under different name. So Sanja works with NGOs, organization, women shelters, you know. So these women wear sunglasses because they were beaten, you know. And I was surprised, you know, when I was traveling a lot. There was, okay, men beat women in Romania as well, you know. There was one famous pop singer, a girl who was beaten by her partner, completely blue, but she didn't want to say anything against him. So the theme is society, but still artists don't catch it, you know, don't deal it. So once I went to them, I really spoke about violence, domestic violence in art, because it is a topic that contemporary artists, not Sanja, other are also dealing with. Then you continue, then what you see on the right side is Lina Sip. It is not from our exhibition, but the system is the same. I'm sorry, David, I'm not as good as you. I don't have the year of production. Excuse me. Okay, photograph. This was also work. A woman. Sorry, article is missing. Takes a little place. Lina is from Estonia, and this work was also part of Estonian pavilion at her last Venice Biennale. She didn't want that we put this text in this exhibition, but I miss it. Estonian president in 2006, when she started to do this series, was talking about the women position in society, and he had the sentence, a woman takes a little place. So Lina went and photographed more than 60 women at their regular job in Estonia, like census or whatever, how women at their workplaces, whatever it is. So this was, this is Gülsün Karamustova. I like this work, and we had to produce it in Bucharest because transport was too late. And I adore this work. It is from 94. Because of current, how can I call it? Muslim fundamentalism going all over, in Western Europe or in Turkey. These are front pages of Chronografia. This was a radio station, published this journal with the most beautiful Turkish women, you know, in the 60s. So this was the secular Turkish state, you know, and Gülsün's father also had a commentary about, because he remembers, he experienced this time of the 60s. So I'm sorry, I don't have entire text. So this should be exhibited on the floor, and the golden frame we had to improvise has to be a little bit more baroque, you know. But this secular time today in Turkey with Erdogan and this new, you know, veiled first lady and so on, memory about this, I don't want to say it is erased, but it is not welcome if they are said. This is one of my favorite pieces, Filipa Cesar, Portuguese artist. Okay, video was shown in the room. I just have to say a couple of words about this particular one. It is a long 45 minutes work, and what you see on the screen is just a photographic album as a Portuguese, now going back to the colony of her native country, Guinea-Bissau. Doing another research, she discovered by accident, a photo album from the National Archives, deserted after the Civil War in 1999. It is this album that is flicked through, commented by Guinean, oh God, I forgot the name of the Guinean photographic historian who goes page by page through album and comments Western gaze. This is how white Westerners living in Guinea-Bissau photograph local population, you know, and you discover here all sorts of racial prejudice. It's a masterpiece, you know, 45 minutes of dream. You see all the time, just this hand and you hear the voice. I mean, with subtitles, of course. So it is, but you know, it is strange because, you know, we living in Eastern Europe, because we didn't have a this type of colonial history, you know. So when I when I spoke about this work in Belgrade, people did not react because it doesn't touch, you know. But it touches racism whenever it appears. Good, okay. Well-known Milica Tomic, Serbian artist. One day the title is very long. It's a poem by Oskar Davičo, a Serbian communist and surrealist painter. So the content of the work, more or less, you know, she's walking. It's 15 minutes or something, and she uses. At some point there are these verses of this poem, but she comments her. She walks around Belgrade with Kalashnikov and the paper and the super paper bag, and nobody reacts. Because people are so used to violence, you know, that there is no reaction of somebody going around, you know, with a gun. So this was one of the. Okay, Milica is now involved in many collective projects. Sometimes I'm sorry that she doesn't have time to work on herself. Okay, so what you see behind this like glass, vertically put, and this. What is the expression? With knitted, embroidered tablecloth. It's by my darlings, my favorite artist really. Aneta and Lucia, Labor Becomes Form. This was produced in Prague. What you see is with unemployed women, they had some money from a certain NGO. Labor Becomes Form. What you see as a pattern here in this tablecloth is graphically represented unemployment in Czech Republic at the moment when the work was produced. So the labor becomes form, because I think I show it in every second exhibition I did. And before and after, it's on the last wall. I'm sorry. This is one of their witty work, you know. Before and after, they went to photographic archive of suffragette movement, feminist demonstration, and so on, and they put the photograph behind this large glass, and they, before and after, is their ironic commentary, you know. There is never either or, there is never yes or no, there is always both. Before and after, yes or no. And so on and so on. It's really, you know, when we speak of feminism, you know, feminism was never unified thing, you know. There were also, for me, the dearest thing is when I read the inner discourse, you know, that's something critical about feminist ideas about it, because this sort of fundamentalist thinking in feminism or in general. This is very, very beautiful work by a French artist, my colleague Olivia exhibited. It is monitored, I assisted to place it on a monitor. Véronique Sapin, French artist, I think she lives in Canada now. It's égalité, fraternité, I'm sorry, liberté is missing, like three notions of the French Revolution. And this work touches, as many others, touches collective memory of a nation. But she worked with school children, and then you see it's the 3 minutes, I think 4 minutes, and the last one 7 minutes is the longest. Liberté, no, I have all liberté, children are like praying, égalité also, but when you come to the fraternité after watching the video, you see school children in the schoolyard, like playing, and suddenly, but it's so subtle, plus it's black and white, you know. Suddenly you realize that white children are going away from the tan kids, from going to the school. So this fraternité, questioning also, what is fraternité, you know, with all these discussions, Le Pen and so on, you know, about colored people and so on. And I installed it on a bench, so it was on a children level, you know, it was just 3 monitors almost on the floor. Good, I'm sorry, this is Annetta and Lucia, these are this yes and no, after and before and after series. And it was, I was so afraid that the glass would be broken. It was not so. It's an interesting work. Ethel Biais, a Romanian artist, you know, but you have to, this is why we need the catalog to tell the story. Olivia is, you know, this rhinoceros, she painted it in the 70s, and for her, rhinoceros was her comment about Ceausescu time. For her, this rhinoceros pulling everything, you know, pushing everything was Ceausescu, in fact. So these are prints in not so bad shapes, but I think it was 74 or 75, so with Romanian artists. And it's also, you know, from today's perspective, it's also a political work. Then Sanja Ivekovic, also my Croatian artist, Invisible Women of Solidarity, you cannot recognize the faces. It's a completely bleached photograph of 6 women who took part in solidarity movement in Gdansk, but they are forgotten from history because only men remained. And next to these 6 photographs that you cannot recognize, this invisibility of solidarity women, we had texts with biographies of these real women. Because if you remember, this is very publicized, the first election in Poland where they used the poster from film High Noon when what was the actor, David Gary Cooper walks, you know, like a cowboy. This was one of the posters for first free elections in Poland, Solidarność also. Okay, sorry. Where I am now. Sorry. Okay, I cannot tell you everything. Why I am? No, I'm sorry. I don't know where I am now. Excuse me. Okay, here. Okay, Sanja. Then it's also concerning memory. This work is 3-channel video installation by Kristina Ivanovska. She's from Skopje, from Macedonia. And in 2005, city of Skopje, which today looks like a Disneyland, you know, with all this, I don't know if you follow what is happening in Skopje, this is terrible, concerning sculptures, public sculptures, the city decided to name the new bridge after somebody. So there was a competition for the name of the new bridge. I don't know who won, but Kristina proposed that to name the bridge after Rosa Plajeva and Nakije Bayram. One was Muslim, Albanian, and Rosa was Bulgarian, who were the first members of Socialist Democratic Party, who were the first member in 2018 or something. They were for banning of the veil, you know, at that time women were wearing the veil. So artist remembers those 2 women, but of course the bridge was named after somebody else. So this is like a three-story installation on 3 large screens. And this is one of my really favorite work. It's just 4 minutes. I'm sorry, you have 2 images. I don't have time to show the video. Rosina Jose Galindo from Guatemala. And it's very, very beautiful, unpretentious, non-spectacular performance. The title, Who Can Erase the Traces? So she walks from the Parliament building and the National Palace of Guatemala, no, this is Parliament Building and National Court of Guatemala in the city, barefoot, using blood, animal blood, not human blood, and leaving the traces on the pavement. And why Richard did it? Because at that time, God, now I can't see his name, person who did a really ethnical cleansing, Guatemala politician who killed hundreds of people, you know, ran as the president of Guatemala, you know. He dared to run as a president. His name is Matt, and she walked like 20 meters asking who will erase the traces of missing bodies, missing people, and so on. So Nekla, this is this Turkish artist. I just talked to David, somebody, you know, some artists are, because they were, I said I had to have many media works because of the cost, but there were also still some good painters today, you know. So Nekla, I don't know, oh no, it comes later, sorry. Next to this, and I decided to show this Galindo work on monitor, a little bit larger monitor, and in the corner, and on this side was work by a Nekla Rusga, Turkish artist. Image will come later, I'm sorry. It's a portrait, it's self-portrait of the artist, and Ataturk, you know, Turkish president, who introduced many important things in Turkey, among others, division from state and religion. The Ataturk, I need some answers. The image will come later. So this is a work by Israeli artists. This is the way how people decorate the bunkers in Israel, you know. So she went to photograph how people are make these bunkers more useful. This is interesting piece. Ioana Ciocciano, Romanian artist. They had a terrible trouble to find, I don't know how many kilos of lei in the lowest money in Romania, one lei, and she made this is a map of Romania, and she filled it with Romanian money. And the most interesting thing was, so people could react, could do something with this money. Could intervene, you know, it was open for participation. You could also take the money, but the funny thing is that nobody has stolen the money. No, people were bringing money, you know. You see also some magnets. It's a strange way of patriotism, you know, in this. So, I'm sorry, no, I don't have time for this Bosnian work, fantastic. And this is one work I cannot show, but concerning memory, you know, this memory, let's say, section dealt with collective memory, personal memory, and this is, and you know, this trend of in art history in our part of the world that historically we have gypsies painting in all painting, photographs, they are still exotic, other and so on. And if I'm completely banal, you know, we are telling their stories, sort of, you know, and musealizing. This Turkey collective consists of two women. Lynn lives in Canada, and Hedina is from Bosnia. She lives someplace in Germany. And this is sound installation, and you hear the voices of Roma women who were forced to exile to Canada and other parts of places, and they tell their memories in Romani language. So it was only sound. So we had one quiet corner in the exhibition where you can hear really their stories. Okay, there was also a text, what they are selling. They are both poets. And this is also a nice piece concerning history of photography. Ilea Corina, she is also exiled. She left Romania but lives someplace. 23 kilograms. And these 23 kilograms mean, you know, when you leave the country, even as exile or normally, you are allowed to take 23 kilograms. But some people take 23 kilograms of photographs, you know, personal stories. They bring with them their life, you know, in photograph. So this is not what we had. We had two monitors it's all on black and white with the stories of the people. This is just one photo installation she did earlier. But it's nice, you know, to think you leave the country and what you bring with you, what you can bring with yourself. You bring family photos or all kinds of photos. So this is beginning of Ilona. I don't have a good photograph from our exhibition, but this is entrance to Ilona Nemeth installation, video installation, interactive video installation, Mother Sophia. Was this work shown here, Ilona? Yes, it was. Okay. So you know the story. I don't need to tell you the story. But this is original, you know. This is part of the work is. This is not from our exhibition. I just took it from the catalog. It's Ilona's interviews with Agnes Heller, and when you sit on this chair, you activate the chair. Oh God! The glass becomes transparent, and then we can watch the video. And this, it's terrible for me. Still difficult to talk about the artist. About whom I work, because I want to tell more. Okay, this is, I think, the last piece from this memory section. Adela Jusic is the same artist who didn't want to talk about the war anymore, and this was her produced in 2007. It's a video, and I show it on a monitor because it must be intimate situation if you want to follow the story, and it's called The Sniper. So it was her diploma work at Art Academy in Sarajevo. She's making with her hand a red point, and over the work is 3 minutes. Over 3 minutes, she read the diary of her father, who was part of army in the war in Sarajevo, and he listed every day how many people he killed with his sniper. So on this and this date, I killed like 7 people. On this and that date, 3 people, and so on. So she reads by the diary, and the video ends with this image, and then she says with her own voice. I mean, at the end, she commences on that and that date. My father died. She was killed by a sniper, and his eye was killed. So it's a memory, family memory of the daughter, you know, and the father. It's very, very. I mean, when I watched it, I cried, and many people did as well. So, okay. Second, this desire can be also many things. Desire, it's about sexuality, it's about self-representation, about relationship, about love, about critique of patriarchy, whatever. So I don't have images here, but you know, in the 30s, they had a women artists who were really engaged in this what is called later bourgeois feminism. You know, there is this. Okay. No, I'm now a little bit tired, so I talk longer. I wanted to have something of Romanian past in this exhibition. It was like to remind them, you know, nobody knows about these women artists. And in the exhibition, we borrowed from the City Museum 6 self-portraits of women artists, Romanian women artists from the 30s, except one. Each of them, and this is you know, known in history, women representing themselves with the tool of their profession, you know, with the pencil, or they just confirmed themselves as artists to self-portraits, which like a professional self-portrait. There was one exhibition which I didn't see, so this knowledge came to me through Ioana Vlasiu, Romanian art historian. She specialized she specialized in the art of the 20s, so this was like a short introduction to many self-portraits with him. This is Nekla Rozgar. This Turkish artist, she does incredible things, you know. These are all aquarelles. They are not all paintings because it was also easier to transport the drawings than aquarelles. But I'm sorry, it's a very bad reproduction. I don't have an installation. Okay, this was like one of them. but what you see here, you see demonstration in Istanbul from 2006, I think, and in front of them, she inserted like couple photographing themselves in front of the demonstrating crowd. Here are two women doing like a people are, I mean, like the people are not taking part, or probably, I mean, it's very banal explanation, I'm sorry. They are not taking part, they are not paying attention, so they don't care what is happening besides them, because they are in love or that they are doing shopping or something like this. It's a very, 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 very beautiful work. But I'm sorry, I don't have better photos. And when I invited her, she said, I'm so surprised you invited me, you know, I paint. And I know that you paint, you know, because everybody around is making media works, you know, so this was this frustration of painters. So, Romanian artist freedom, she says, it's a very, very, very strong feminist 20-minute video, so this was just okay. Martha Wilson, American artist, she wanted always to come to Romania, so they got her through American Embassy. And I love this piece concerning this also self-representation. There is a series of 4 videos which she impersonates first ladies, you know, so this is Nancy Reagan and so on. It's hilarious, you know. And these are live performances she did in New York in the end of the 80s. And it was, you know, budget was so small, so only Marta and Nekla, the Turkish artists, were there at the opening. We didn't have money. They didn't have money to invite more people. Okay, this is probably work you know, normal work, Pauline Gordy and Renate Lorenz, Swiss-German couple, lesbian couple. So, but I don't have a, you know, it is, I don't know whether it's known here, this Hannah Kulik was a British, let's say, maid, of hostess of a British lord, or I forgot his name, and she liked to photograph herself in different roles, you know, as a slave, as a labor worker, as a lady, and so on. So it's incredible series. There are books about her in feminist art history, so they restaged this as a video piece about her life. And in fact, Renata wrote her PhD about this incident. Griselda Pollock also writes about this incident. Okay, Sylvia Kristofek, she was also there, and her thesis is, today, feminist artists should take care of men. So for the moment, she's into her face, she's painting maid portraits, basta. So this was like the beginning of the section, and I'm sorry, I have very bad photo. This is also one of my favorite work. I'm sorry, it's from the catalog. Mihaela Kaldanska, she comes from Bulgaria but lives in Romania, and these are like Din I Fear, like this size portraits, Turkish men's eyes, you know. She photographed Turkish men she found in Bulgaria or in Romania, and this was just like 8 photos, it was just one line on the wall, and in one catalog I read, she described how she made this work. She addressed the man, Turkish man in the street, and asked, would you allow me to photograph you? And then he would say yes, and then he would ask, how would you like me to look? And then she said, you look as you look at me when you didn't see the camera, you know. So it was like a male gaze. And also, you know, I was just thinking about her look at him, Jana Želipska video you have here. This would belong to this corner, you know. Women artists looking at men. This is incredible video also by this artist, Anka Ribnik. She did this carpet thing. It's called The Frame. It's no sound. It's perfectly photographed. All the time what you see this man who is looking at the empty frame. You know? So I really want, and this is now, there is a new journal published in Romania, this Arta journal. He is on the cover, you know, so he tries to identify the meaning. It's a friend of her, I think, a German philosopher or something like this. Okay, so I think we are all tired now. I skip. Okay, one of my now. This is work I really wanted to have for gender check, but I knew that exhibition will be packed, so I didn't invite Mariela. She lives in Sofia, and I knew this work since 2006. It's called Lady's Carpet, and she did it. She put together many wedding dress, together, because she's also a fashion designer, and you are supposed to walk on it, but nobody there, not even me, You are supposed to walk over Lady's Carpet. Good, this was now, we come to some solo videos, Katarzyna Kozira and Ilka Strato, mainly self-portrait, self-representation in video, Maria Litte, very, very good video, self-defense, she's producing this action painting, boxing it, it's about 15 minutes. Hito Steyr, lovely Andrea, this work. Then Western, also Olivia Michalkianu. Very, very sensitive piece, this is the artist, it's not part of the video. You see the video, it's very sensitive situation in women's life. It's hysterectomia, when uterus had for certain reasons to be removed from woman's body. And she made work about this, only somehow you don't see anything, you see, and the work is called Like a Poppy Petal, but these are the questions, and I read about it, I know about it, am I still me? This question, when womanhood, or the womanhood we imagine we have, is put by medical reasons into crisis. This was really, I almost cried. It's very, very abstract, poetic, but ask these questions. Am I still me? Then, this is incredible. This Eliane is a wonderful painter. She deals, let's say, with this soap opera themes, love and so on. But this is incredible work, and this is 1.80 meters, it's life size. It's a hermaphrodite. She painted a hermaphrodite. And the name is Balkan Shepherd. I never met her, so I don't know much about this work. But in this entire space we desire, there are maybe 2 lesbian or homosexual attractions, and all the rest was hetero stories, and somehow this painting fit in the middle. What is this? What is this? Something in between, because this is a gender given by nature, not. Okay, now last 3 images, porno section. This is the same artist who did this painting women who make problems never enter history. So this was a small penis section, still lifes by Susanna Dunn. They are so kitschy, but I had to have it. And this is one before last, Tatiana Yermolaeva. The work is called Off and On. I saw it in the exhibition Naked Man in Bucharest. It's 15 seconds. But since we don't have children, I can show what is this about. So it's indicative that she called this work video sculpture. And it is shown on a small monitor, what you see. It's also women's gaze. You see this situation, the penis is making light off and on, off and on, off and on. It's a beautiful, funny piece. So my mistake as a curator was that I didn't, the people who worked, who had to build the walls and put the nails, and we don't have this in Romania, It was my mistake that I didn't show them this video first day, because everything would be faster, So they were really motivated when they were installing this video, so I said, if I ever go to do this next time, I will have another strategy. Sorry, I had one more image because it is somehow probably too statement for an end, but okay, this is what women are working with. Okay, so it's enough, thank you.
Thank you very much. To jest priestor pre vaše otázky na Poprosím, kto je inštruovaný na nosenie mikrofónu, aby si mikrofón zobral. Thank you. I just opened the...
My earphones.
Okay.
Below my bag. You take my bag up?
I have a new one.
Okay. Thank you.
Tak nech sa páči.
Chcem sa opýtať oboch prítomných hostí. Ja som videla výstavu After the Ball pred takmer 15 rokmi.
Moment, we're not getting... Which channel are you on? The translation.
I got the channel.
Oh, which...
Can you tell me? You know, it's very dark here. Either we put light or you stand when you ask questions because we don't see you.
It's here.
Aha.
Chcela by som sa spýtať oboch prítomných hostí. Ja som bola v Štokholme v Moderna Museet, keď bola výstava After the Ball. A mám spomienku na dve veci. Pretože som pripravovala vtedy s Máriou Lavajovou účasť Slovenska na tejto výstave a asi Ilona Németh tam bola vystavená jej posteľ. Takmer prvýkrát na medzinárodnom fóre. A zostali z tej výstavy u mňa také dve spomienky. Prvá bola, že sa mi zdalo v tom čase, že asi bolo prirodzené pre balkánske krajiny, že bolo tam veľa politického umenia, čo sa vlastne u nás až tak veľmi nereflektovalo. A druhá vec bolo, že som tam prvýkrát videla v tomto kontexte diela, ktoré vlastne boli v sekcii feminizmus, myslím, že to volalo, a pripravovala ich Iris Miller-Masterman. A chcela som sa opýtať teda vás, že ako sa teraz spätne, po 15 rokoch, pozeráte na túto koncepciu? Je to výstavy.
I don't understand how Iris now, because Iris later made this conference.
I cooperate with Iris in this time because I was working in the show center. So I prepared Ilona's presentation there with the bed. Ilona was the bed there. Do you remember?
No, I mean, I didn't come to Bratislava.
Yes, doesn't matter.
And I'm sorry about that. Sorry.
And my question is, how did you look at the exhibition from distance of 15 years? Because I remember 2 points from this exhibition after the war. One was much more political things, works, but it was maybe probably normal in this context, Balkan. More Balkans works. And second was feminist art, which was first time what I saw in this time from the Eastern Europe. So what do you look at these exhibitions from distance now?
Can I tell you the truth?
Yeah.
I still love the exhibition, sorry. But can I just say? You know what? This, after the war was like, let's say, more or less, I'm sorry. After the wall, we had also these 4 sections, and the last one on the lower floor was this, what I call then genderscapes, you know, and this was first of all, you know, we traveled all around, we visited every country. David even went alone to many countries. I also went. You see the material and you realize that in every country there are feminist works, you know. So it was just a question. When I remember they let me work in the Moderna Museet library, and for this gender okay, it was clear there were political works, you know, this social plastic, whatever it was called, then works dealing with memory, but I was surprised myself then. It was 98, when we were finalizing on 99, you know. When I put the works, all the works for this, whatever genderscapes mean, it was all on the floor, photograph of every work, and I realized at that moment, you know, it was so clear when you see the works, it's about masculinity and femininity, you know, because there were really some feminist work done by male artists as well. So, I mean, it was so obvious. I mean, there was no discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things I mean, the model of the exhibition I have no problem with at all. But the idea was that 10 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it's a crazy idea, of course, but 3 people would go out and visit the 22, I think, new countries that had developed in those 10 years, and make a selection of what they thought was the best. And we came back and we presented what we thought the best things were to each other and agreed them. If anyone felt very, very adamant, we let them have their way. You know, you've got to. But it was a kind of collective operation in that sense. And of course, it could have. You know, I'm sure we missed some things, but certainly one of the things we were looking for was women artists. I mean. And I think that they, you know, ever since at one time, probably in the 50s, there weren't so many women artists operating. But certainly by the 70s there were, and through the 60s they were developing. And you know, the diminution of the boys' club, I mean, it continues. It's still continuing exponentially. I mean, in China now, in the youngest generation of artists, in the late 20s and early 30s, you know, it's about 50-50. It wasn't before. If you look at the shows of Chinese art in the mid-90s, it's really a boys' club. And this is true of lots and lots of places. I mean, you know, and what was really good, I think, is that there were so many people. Of course, Bojana, active interest in that field, added to that. It's one of the reasons why I wanted you to work on it.
Oh, you never told me why.
Yeah. Well, also, I
will ask you about. No, but I would like, when you finish, I would like to add something.
Yeah, but I think also the reason I asked Bojana to go in is that she's from the area, and we couldn't have a huge committee. I didn't want it to be a committee show, but I wanted really the chief curator of the project to be from the East, so to speak. And then I needed to involve one of the curators in Stockholm, and Iris was the obvious one to do. And then I wanted to work on it. So I mean, together. So I don't have a problem with the model. People ask me 20 years after, should one do it again? And I think that it's too late. Even in Russia now, they've stopped being post-Soviet. And they kept being post-Soviet the longest. It was the longest an issue. And as you saw from the Russian artists I showed you earlier, it's no longer an issue. They're not struggling with the language of being Soviet at all. It doesn't occur to them. Whereas, I mean, the Vinogradov to Brzezowski, even the Brenners and Kuliks, you know, were very much struggling with the history.
You know what is interesting? I mean, I remember how I worked then. We had so many, and I'm always honest. This exhibition would not be possible without the Soros network, because we got from each Soros center so much material, you know, and this is for which we are very, very grateful, you know, because although, you know, in every Soros center, in every country, there was like a Soros artist and the other artist. I always like to consult all. But concerning women and men, you know, I was really personally, I don't know if you remember how you worked, but I was personally attracted by the theme of the work, you know, whether it is a theme that we find or I find relevant for these last 10 years. I really didn't search for women artists. At the end, it appeared that there were more women, somebody counted, Kathy Dippel certainly, that there are like one more women than men. It didn't matter. For me, it's pretentious to see now. To catch the spirit of the time at that moment, 99. Meaning that we started in 97, and then there are relevant themes, like poverty, nouveau pauvre, I call it then, and so on. This was for me not issue to push women artists. This was just an idea to have women artists.
Yeah, I think if you're looking in the right way, it levels out. And it is pretentious to go for balance. It's patronizing to say we have to have a quota of this and that. It's not how to work. But now, increasingly, the Moscow show was about half of them were women. Wasn't set out that way, that's how it worked out. Did a show of contemporary Japanese art, same thing happened. Who would imagine in Japan, almost patriarchal structures? But it worked out. It didn't try to do it. It's just that if you're working with, if you're rooted in the time, in this time, it happens. Thank God.
Can I if I may? It's a bit late, so I don't want to get this too complex, but a couple of things. I'm presently really interested in thinking about our infrastructure. So what kind of institutions do we need today, at this moment in history? And also what you just mentioned with the Soros network, what certain structures allow and what others disallow. And there are a few moments when you referred to the museum, to MNAC as a constellation that was really difficult and one needs to fight against and with. Indeed. Now, David mentioned exhibitions are necessary, and I fully agree, but I think we find ourselves in a point in history when we are troubled by both aesthetic and political representation at this moment. So my biggest worry about art institutions at this moment is that there is a huge discrepancy between what they show, what they talk about through exhibitions, and who or what they really are. In other words, many institutions do exhibitions about democracy. It's just an opulent theme, everybody does something about democracy, but those institutions are utterly undemocratic. And then there's an exhibition about feminism, but the institution reproduces the pattern of the patriarchal society, etc., etc., etc. So for me, the most important is to figure out how the front matches the back. So how the institution becomes democratic, how the institution becomes feminist. And to me, this opens another territory for curatorial work. Not just exhibition, but transforming these institutions so they become what they preach, in a way. And something that Bojana and I discussed today is the notion of solidarity. So how do we teach generations of women to be feminists to one another, for example? This is a crucial question, and I think in Bratislava and Slovakia, it's a huge issue to deal with. How do we teach one another, through exhibitions, through our curatorial and artistic practices, to be democratic? In other words, how in the art world can we enact the world we talk about, the world we desire? And I think this is the most important thing, in my view, today, what curatorial practice needs to engage with. And I wonder whether, if you would agree, if there are strategies, how do we really not just talk about things, but do those things, that they become a pattern of our behavior, of our being in the world with one another, whether feminist, democratic or other.
Maria, it's incredibly important question, but how you can change institution as an outsider? You can't, because in NAC it was totally patriarchal structure, people, women curators, male workers, physical workers, totally structured, and the only person who really pushed exhibition to happen, it's a great patriarch, and this was Mr. Oreveanu. So how can I explain? This is also paradox, not only in the 90s, but every day, you know? Because I think, how to change patriarchal? This is also Ruth Nowak argument. The museum today buy women's work, but they keep it in cellar. You know, they don't show it. So I cannot help, you know. I'm freelance and I'm in pension. So how can I change institution? I can only change myself. These are all these paradoxes. I don't know how you can teach me. How we can teach artists to be feminine.
Well, they have to be changed from the top. I mean, the people who are running the institutions have to treat people equally, and they don't. And they also have to make some very tough decisions about how and what they do, what their programs are, and where they accept money from. What we found at the moment is a complete commodification of art in the museums and the commodification of the museum itself. So the whole thing is like one great supermarket, and Tate Modern is a classic example of that. So everything is about branding. You know, they managed to do a show of Sildo Merrilees, which is a cross between a children's playground in which, and the kind of adventure centre in which politics, which is central to his work, is completely expunged. How do you do that? So there's a kind of faux politics. How do you have a documenta which says, you know, it's so much of its time and is involved in politics, and you show work from Afghanistan, then what you show about Germany is reiterating that Kassel was a nasty brown Nazi time, you know, back in the 30s and 40s. Isn't there politics now in Germany? If you're interested in politics, if you want to show it so obviously, I mean, most curators are idiots when it comes to any political analysis or thought about what is actually in the world, what is happening. And they're more interested in, you know, in making a career for themselves as some kind of star system, or just struggling on little pay because they love art, and that, of course, is the great majority. And the one doesn't like the other. Of course they don't. But of course the majority have the integrity. Poor but honest. But that's not a way forward. It's really not a way forward. And the institutions, the big institutions, I mean, they don't really pay a living wage for their people. I mean, the Tate is far worse than the British Museum, for instance. And the Whitechapel is one of the worst. It pays the minimum wage, but not a living wage to its regular staff. Of course, they're getting fed up. And then, at the parties, all the super rich are coming in to give the money, or they're hoping we'll give the money. So, at least one person in the organization has to be able to afford a nice suit. Because there's nothing more of a turn-off to a rich person to have to consort with beggars or homeless. No, they want to feel that they're consorting with people like them. I sound very cynical, but I am quite cynical about this situation. And I mean, that good art is not about that. It's about good art and supporting it and doing it because you think it is good, and being prepared to say why you think it's good. And you know, I respond to people who care about that, artists and curators. And they're in the minority, sadly.
Just to add to your, how we missed one word, and this is the word how we can teach. How we can teach or help or direct, I don't know whether we have rights to teach anybody, but how to make feminist artists in neoliberal patriarchy, because this is what we live about, you know, competition and everything and the market, so how, you know? Because still, you know, a year ago, this was a discussion with Kati Chukro, Russian artists don't want they don't want that people think they are feminists because they would be put in this corner, you know, like isolation and so ghettos. I mean, we hear this from the 70s. Something can change, probably not in Russia, but how maybe? Is exhibition, is the function of exhibition to educate audience? This is important question that Angelaki, Dimitriaki asked. Probably the purpose of feminist art is to instruct audience.
I think the audience is not that stupid. And I think a lot of, there's an awful lot of institutional agonizing about making contemporary art available to people, making it intelligible, all these things. The thing is, their tone of voice is completely wrong, and their set is wrong. Their kind of basic human warmth and accessibility is wrong. And I think the thing is to actually do, really consider how you show the work, and so the artist is happy with it, and you're happy with it, and actually want to share it, and provide enough information if people want to read it or not. But the experience is there for people, and only they can have it, and that's very precious. And I think in an art gallery, no one should be telling you what to do or what to think. It's up to you. And there's information to help you if you want, but not otherwise. I hate this instruction of, this is hierarchical, and it's actually patronizing. Because the majority of people have their own experiences, and they're not that stupid. They may be alienated, but they're not stupid.
No, but David, when I say audience, it's not just all people who come to visit, for we are all these participants in the art system. They are like art critics. I still cannot imagine in our part of the world daily, most important daily in the country, having a feminist review of an exhibition. Can you do this? Regularly, not only once, But in the Guardian, you find it.
In the Guardian, yeah, sure.
In the Guardian, you find it.
It's the only newspaper I read in